Is going on? Chris Brock here with ChatGPT for Business and Life. I am here with John Salisbury, just like the steak. He is a principal at NexiGen, which is a great cybersecurity platform in the Midwest. They do a lot of really cool things in that space. I've known John for several years, and we both sort of had our own journey into AI and getting to meet at this local AI Catalyst program that they have in the Midwest that's sponsored by our Centrifuge, which is our sort of startup accelerator ecosystem, but it has many of the institutions, universities, big co's, and then tech companies in sort of a consortium just to talk about the future of AI, risk, trustworthiness, safety, you name it. So John and I got to sort of rekindle a little bit about 2 weeks ago when we realized we both really enjoyed this idea of AI. So, John, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Mr. Brock. This is awesome.
So, also joining us, Alden. Alden with Custom GPT. He has been all over LinkedIn today. I've seen that. Thanks
Got a takeover.
Thanks for joining. If you don't know who Alden is, he's the CEO of Custom GPT AI. It is one of the easiest solutions for businesses or organizations to utilize to build a RAG AI system, which really means how you can train a chatbot to work for your business or your organization and put it on your website quickly and efficiently. So, Alden, thank you for being a great sponsor and nudge to get me to say yes to doing these videos. So we're going to try to do these Wednesdays. I see 6 people I may have tuned in, so I think we're broadcasting this week. So all in all, thank you both for joining. We may have a couple others that I invited. I hope this sort of weekly grows into some really good thought leaders sharing sort of their thoughts or understanding or new ideas around AI. So thank you guys for joining. And thanks everybody in the audience for giving another try to us this week or tuning in for the first time today.
Awesome.
Yeah. How do I share this on social media?
Okay, so this is already live, I do believe, on Custom GPT, or not Custom GPT. It's actually on ChatGPT for Business and Life, the Facebook group. It's into my LinkedIn. It's into a couple other locations. So yeah, like if you want to check online right now, you should be able to find those links and be able to reshare those. But what's cool about tonight's format, and we'll see how well this works, I've been able to use an AI called Opus Clip to look at some of the really cool talks that have happened over the last year with Sam Altman or Greg Brockman or just several in the AI space. And I was able to load them in. So maybe we can play, one of those. Maybe you can find the link, share on social media, and then we can give some feedback onto this first video that I thought we should take a look at. I know we're all very interested in what it means to be in AI, and there's nobody better to tell us about AI than Sam Altman. So let's check this out, and we'll be right back.
I'd like to take a minute to talk about some of the stuff that we've done over the past year. About a year ago, November 30th, we shipped ChatGPT as a low-key research preview, and that went pretty well. In March, we followed that up with the launch of GPT-4, still the most capable model out in the world. And in the last few months, we launched voice and vision capabilities so that ChatGPT can now see, hear, and speak. And more recently, we launched DALL-E 3, the world's most advanced image model. You can use it, of course, inside of ChatGPT. For our enterprise customers, we launched ChatGPT Enterprise, which offers enterprise-grade security and privacy, higher speed GPT-4 access, longer context windows, a lot more. Today, we've got about 2 million developers building on our API for a wide variety of use cases, doing amazing stuff. Over 92% of Fortune 500 companies building on our products. And we have about 100 million weekly active users now on ChatGPT. And what's incredible on that is we got there entirely through word of mouth. People just find it useful and tell their friends.
So there we go. It doesn't allow us to change the orientation, but that's Sam Altman telling us that he created with his team ChatGPT. They launched it as a science sort of project. They didn't put any ads or push behind it, and yet became the most highly adopted solution, essentially, of human civilization. So what do you think?
I love Sam Altman. Like, he's a beautiful speaker. But Ilya is the guy that gets my mind firing. Like, he's just so crazy smart. I watch all his interviews as well, and you kind of get deep into the tech stack and the philosophy and how the inner workings work. Sam's a great front man, though. I like his communication.
So what's your thoughts, Alden, on ChatGPT and just sort of its launch? When it happened, I guess, AI was sort of around, but it really happened for everybody in late November in 2022. So Alden, what were you doing when like ChatGPT hit?
I was basically bored and depressed on my couch. That's pretty much sums up what I was doing. And I would say, like, pretty much ChatGPT woke me up.
Oh, wow.
From a tech perspective. I'm a pretty old guy. So, until this AI thing happened, guys like us were at a disadvantage, basically, right? That's why I was bored, depressed, and watching Netflix on my couch, right? And this AI thing came along. It reset a lot of the rules. You could pretty much these days, you can take a pick of the use case or the company that you want to disrupt and pretty much like have a legitimate chance of disrupting companies, right?
Instantly.
Yeah. Like,
incredible.
If you had told me in November that somebody would disrupt Google, I would have absolutely laughed in their face, right? And now you see I use Google only to check if my internet connection is on. And there are days that I don't even go to Google, right? And if that becomes, that drop becomes like a wave, then you're talking about the most powerful company of Earth being disrupted, right?
Yeah, but it's still got like a lot of power and usefulness, right? Because it's got indexing of all this data. So its own AI products are doing just amazing things, like AlphaFold and some of the newer releases on the material sciences and so forth. I mean, they're all in too, right? Like Demis is not
I'm not saying Google is not going anywhere anytime soon. But they were they owned the whole internet, and now they don't.
Yeah.
Right. I used to always joke in 2022 that Google owns the internet.
Right. This, if you look at the distribution of capital and technology, ad tech was the #1 generator of capital. There's this bell curve, and having search advertising was a very phenomenal disruptive force. Programmatic ad tech is something that they owned, and they really owned it around things that are very commonplace, like recipes, or where am I going to go to, fix something, or just basic questions. So right now, having recipes through custom or just ChatGPT, it's great. I go to it every time. Why would you ever go and do a Google search for that anymore? If we do history tours or anything like that with my family, I'm not going to Google, and it's very accurate in those things. And I feel trustworthy.
It's so smart. It's so smart. And then when it starts visualizing in different ways and you start seeing it express itself in some of the new mixed reality and virtual reality environments, you're like, unbelievable. the capability set and the immersiveness is just wonderful. I still, we use like YouTube and social media though. I mean, that's still a place people go to connect with people, because that still matters. Like humans love humans. I'm going to say that the whole time. We just do.
And eventually those also will get disrupted. Like, YouTube will get disrupted, Facebook will get disrupted, and it's already happening. You can see, like, all these fake videos or like these AI avatars. Sometimes when I'm talking on Facebook, I really don't know if I'm talking to an AI or if it's a real person. Right.
Like that's going to be really important though, is identifying if it is a human or a bot. And that technology to me is super special. And I see some really cool groups spinning up some just amazing platforms to figure that problem out. So I think you're pointing to like a core issue that's like a part of the whole substrate of how we communicate.
Right. What's your take on that, John? Like, what do you see as, like, there's a lot of, I'm in some teachers groups, and every day there's something about, like, my student used AI, but I don't know whether he really did or not. And
well, I think that identifying humans, number one, is like one of the most important things. So when you think about that, you're like, okay, we use like 2-factor, 3-factor, and we're trying to figure out if somebody's using a password, then a text, or we use biometric, right? And all those things can kind of like be simulated to some degree. So I think Apple was kind of like really ahead of the game when they introduced LiDAR, because that gives you this like human meat bag interface that it's actually moving in a physical environment, right? Because you're getting that telemetry off the skin and the entire body. I think that's an interesting way. And then tying a location to it. So am I actually in a residential location? When I see groups like unifying that process, they're basically creating this new level of executive passport. So, and they are also introducing like zero knowledge transfers. So think about like going to the airport, you don't hand them the passport, you just show them the app, you scan in the QR code. They don't actually learn who you are, but they're authorized that information is accurate. I then move through and my identity is protected the whole time. That kind of onboarding ramp on the perimeter, in my mind, becomes really important. And then from there on the inside, that I don't know. I don't think anybody's understood it. Once you get past the perimeter, if you're putting up something fake, how are you going to know? I mean, it's very difficult. I've seen some deep fake groups that have analysis tools on deep fakes, though, that are coming out with tools that usually have some telemetry, but I don't know how good they are. I haven't tested them.
Well, I think, John, what he's sort of reaching out in a very technical way is that we as people have to connect with this new AI. And we already had systems, we have phones, and we have all of this different technology that's just sort of surrounding us all the time. And now AI is now this thing that, we feel that it's going to come into our business. We feel it's going to come into our organizations. We feel it's going to come into our daily life, and how to share that in a way that we're sharing it with an AI, and we're hopefully keeping it as private as industry standard best can be. I mean, I appreciate the idea of security. A lot of this should be secured, or at least where you're not training models on your personally identifiable information. But what's tough with AI, it works better if you share that type of information with it. Probably, it would probably work better in the future if you shared your personalized overview of your entire body's like medical record. Probably would work better for you. But do you want to share that with the world? No. So I think over time we're going to figure out how to bridge that gap of what am I sharing with this? What's sort of okay to get out into the world, and what's really important that shouldn't get out into the world? And then how much control do I have, or when do I know I'm connected to an AI? So all those are like super important questions, John. And I really appreciate that sort of view. And at the same time, I'm like full gear, full go on using AI. So, like how can we rapidly implement it in our day-to-day life in ways that just really work and sort of make a difference? And how do we as people just, I feel like the three of us are very technical, which is awesome, and like what Alden was saying earlier about being in a slumber and being awoken. Like that's what I felt like. I don't feel technology really changed after. For me, it was social social media, mobile phones, and cloud computing. Those three things happened, and it was really awesome. And it was a bell curve, and it's been the same for like 15 years, 14 years. And then all of a sudden, it was like, I think this is coming, and then it was here, and I knew it was going to be the most ubiquitous solution ever seen. My first 5 days with ChatGPT, like I think I was like more productive than I've ever been, and like it was a really amazing time frame, So
I remember talking to this guy, and it was like 2 weeks in, and I'm like, I got like 40 hours into ChatGPT, and he's like, what? And I'm like, okay, this thing is just so interesting, I can't get out of it. But then when you understand it's just a really smart WinZip file, and this thing's speaking Shakespeare to you, it's like, what in the world is going on? Well, how does this thing work the right way? And it just gets you so curious.
Yeah. So I think we're starting to see now that people are starting to utilize AI, and they're starting to see that like it can sort of solve what Greg Brockman called like impossible problems, or problems that would just be too mundane and too difficult and too costly to like really try to solve. I think that there's ways that certain things are going to be solved. What do you guys think are some of these things that AI is going to solve for businesses this year?
Yeah. Yeah. The use cases that I'm seeing emerging, I've never seen anything like that in my lifetime, right? This to me is a once in a century event, like similar to the steam engine that, basically changed muscle to machines. And the use cases that I'm seeing emerging are similar. Uh, and I'm seeing them in play right now. Like we have now over 5,000 business customers, and it's not just like one use case that is emerging. People are doing incredible stuff, incredible. Like, it's almost like there's a new SaaS company emerging every day, right? Or like 50 every day.
Yeah, I'd say that latter number is probably
Yeah,
or more.
right? And to me, that is the big part, that people, are starting to do stuff with the AI and it's just getting started.
Sure.
That's exciting to see.
So
what do you think?
I'm seeing all sorts of stuff, but I see people wanting to like do this big thing. Their arms are all the way out. Like, I want to take on the world, right? I wanted to answer all my questions. And that to me isn't how you begin your journey. You do this, you find something very small that just has, it's important, but it's got some focus to it. And then you start nurturing that with just activity, right? Yeah. And then you get that telemetry, and you're getting that understanding. And then you start broadening, and then it starts baking its way into your ecosystem. And then eventually you're an AI company. And that's what every company is going through, that transition. And they need guides. They need people that understand the technology. They understand the security, because there's so many people just putting in solutions so fast that I'm seeing like really big security holes. Like, you'll log in, I'll see a customer log in as themselves, and the LLM's completely shared. There's another customer that logs in, and you can start asking it questions about your competitor's data, and it's popping it out, right? That's like not acceptable. So we need responsible, safe, secure usage of it. And that's where these guides become so important. But the use cases are a bunch of them. And you start speaking to your data differently. So the time compression I'm seeing for developing solutions is from a year and like $1 million down to 12 weeks and like $225,000. So, okay, that's a win. Second of all, after it gets put in place, your users hardly need any training because it's a intuitive interface. So now I've just activated my people, and I've saved a bunch of money, which means I'm probably hiring more people because I can take on more work. So it's the opposite of getting rid of people. It's actually empowering them with superpowers, and let's hire more to do great work. So in my mind, I see it just activating all over the place in practical, responsible ways. In fact, myself or any groups I work with, we won't take on a deal with human displacement. Not even interested. It's not even something we'd want to accept. If your mindset's going into that way, it's the wrong way in my mind.
I do think that this is going to be something that if you empowered your workforce, that person could be 3 to 5 times more effective, almost with like basic training and access to tools. And it's not a labor question totally. It's also a technological spend question and a budget. And what I've seen, it's sort of what you alluded to, John, is that like companies want to think that AI is going to solve something, and then it's going to solve everything. And then there's so many options. There's this paralysis of selection, where if you just tried to do something really well, just this is what you can do. This is the parameters. Custom GPT is an awesome parameter-based solution. You're getting a great trained chatbot that you can train, your organization can train. That's very specific, very doable, and like turns out to be a very beneficial solution. Having knowledge bases that you can just query by asking any question is a huge win, and then as you start going deeper into the value chain, for sure, like there's questions on like, should you go open source with these large language models, or should you use the APIs? And there's nothing wrong with ChatGPT or Anthropic, or so there's several that are popping up. So do you rent versus buy? And I think that gets to the idea of budgeting. Like one, you can rent much cheaper to start than you can buy some of this technology, and it's expensive. It's probably the most expensive compute of all time in any comparable terms. So what are you seeing with like the decision makers saying yes to AI with all these questions?
Right. Yeah. So the ones we are seeing are the smart guys who are starting very small, clear, zero risk, public data, keep a simple budget, $500, $1,000, $5,000, get rolling, right? This is, I advocate for a crawl, walk, run, fly approach, right? So people who to take this crawl, walk, fly, run, fly approach, they are able to get rolling, they are able to learn, and then they are able to, improve on that, right? I'll say that there are companies that are trying to boil the ocean. Like they are like straight away, like, we need to spend 10% of our budget on AI this year to sound cool. So those guys are going like, big time into AI data and like complicated use cases and all of that. And so I'm already starting to see like, people who like tried to build stuff themselves using LangChain, and now they are like, man, this is a hell that I didn't want to go down. Right? And yeah.
But money is just a proof of value exchange, right? So like, it's not like a real thing. It's just like, hey, this is an accounting process for us spending activity somewhere, right? So when you put the budget there, you're almost saying, hey, give me proof that you're actually putting activity towards this exploration on this new technology, right? So that's how I think the top level guys look at it. They're like, hey, go play with this new stuff, learn it, and then bake it into our organization. We know what's valuable. And if we don't use it, we're going to fall behind. It's funny how I see organizations like our people's mindsets. When we first saw GPT, and we see it's got this like jumping aspect to it. Like it's not like traditional software where it just keeps building like this. It's got this like this kind of like wavy approach to it where you almost like get whiplash. You're like, man, did it learn that much that fast? Well, no, it already knew that much. We just figured out how to express it out of it, right? So that's one. So the usage becomes incredibly important. But in my mind, I think these groups should be exploring, and then a certain amount of budget allocation is just proof that you actually are exploring, right? So we went all in right away. I've been all in since kind of the beginning, kind of like you. I didn't create your amazing platform, but we're working on the security side of it, which we're real excited about.
Yeah. So it's definitely this new time frame, and like I definitely what's just a validated proof that I'm seeing for Alden's side is that companies are saying yes to AI. They know that there's a spin to it. There's not a true freemium model that I think is the best way to roll into AI. You can use Bing search, you can use like some AIs like that to get acquainted. But when you really make that first step into AI as a business or an organization, I think that we're seeing that the custom GPT is a major winner because it's a secured environment, easy to deploy, and it's that next step. Without going into like that next level of, like maybe like a federal or a DARPA or anything like that, like what do you think the next solution outside of knowledge-based chatbots that we're going to see? Alden?
So on the technical side, I'm seeing like workflows emerging, right?
Ah.
So what I'm seeing is like these are like silly things like an invoice comes into your email, pass the invoice, make sure it has the right fields, and then you make things a lot more efficient. Like I know a company that does that. They're processing millions of invoices, right?
Yep.
You can easily have AI do a lot of that processing. There are other emerging, patent work, contract law, like looking at NDAs. The two biggest industries that I'm seeing that are really adopting AI are education and legal.
Well,
These two,
legals makes all the sense in the world. Like
legal is like
it's so well defined. Its data is so accurate. Those people are so smart and write so well. So it's like they have great quality of data, right?
And I know that we have a legal expert here,
Yeah.
historic guy who won the first legal case in America.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So
look at you.
Yeah. It was a really good sort of concept. I mean, like I have like some partners around that are lawyers, and I really
tell that story real quick because maybe everybody hasn't heard it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I built an accessory structure, also known as a shed, on my property. Okay, and there's all these rules, and I thought I owned my house, and like I thought I understood where frontage is and this, but I guess I didn't. So I got a citation that said that I had an illegal structure. I needed to move it 15 feet to the left. And I was like, this is so crazy. Why would I need to do this? And I think the rules are wrong. So I actually got a citation that I fought in court. And after a grueling battle, I got it thrown out. So I was the first person in the United States that's a non-lawyer, so pro se, that represented himself and had a legal case dismissed. And I utilized AI for all my filings. And at the time, running the group, ChatGPT for Business and Life was really great because I was up on this idea of what the lawyers that utilized and cited false cases and hallucinated. Like I understood that. I also understood like what the capabilities of a large language model really was. And like what I figured out is that if you trained an AI on your case and the local jurisdictional case law, and there's rules to the legal system that I found out. And I was never really a part of that ever in school. I like philosophy and books, but law was not my background. I was able to utilize AI to file motions. I was actually granted the first motion in the state of Ohio. They granted my Native American status, which was really cool. I'm a member of the Pickawashani tribe, an enrolled member. So we got recognized by the state of Ohio. But I was able to use AI to get all of these filings through. And that's when I realized that the future, I've always heard of like the jailhouse lawyer. You're going to find for sure people being able to self-represent themselves and file paperwork, because the legal system is sort of a cottage industry in a way where they're really filing paperwork a lot. And if you know the templated structure of how to file and jurisdictional principles in your state and local laws, you have a really good shot at doing it. And if you were a law firm right now and you were savvy and smart, you would be able to, I think, attract a lot more business and be able to perform a better level of work for all of your clients, not being displaced by pro se people, but why don't you help people navigate through this crazy system, but do it quicker, faster, and more efficiently? And I think
you're jumping into a couple of problems though. So one, businesses themselves have their own contracts that they manage, right? So they might have 100,000 contracts, right? And they might be across the globe, and they might be in many languages, and they might be in many jurisdictions, and they have international trade law and local law, and they have multiple languages, right? Well, they're outsourcing this to attorneys, right? So there's potential that they would use LLMs internally to reduce their billing structure, right? And then be able to ensure that they can understand what their risk profile is. Because if you're looking across, like if you're in Zimbabwe, you don't speak the language as in America as a corporate attorney. You're relying on the local attorney to translate it properly, put the language in, and then apply to the local area, right? So when you start implementing that data in these larger RAG systems, you're going to be able to get your risk profile across your entire ecosystem on the planet multilingual. That gives you an understanding of like, wow, we have a lot more risk than existed. So that there's potentially a threat to attorneys and so forth, because companies can now do that internally, right? So the attorney becomes this more advisor / expert in this space, in my mind, and has a kind of like a new lens and new value chain that exists. But if they get good at this, then they're just doing more. For more people with less. And I think they have a hard time finding attorneys nowadays. So it seems like there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of AI workflows, is what Alden said earlier. There's a lot of AI workflows with the entire global ecosystem of the legal chain. I think it can happen. It just, when is that window? What do you think, Alden?
Chris, I think I had mentioned to you when you won that case, right? What would be really cool is what you did as an expert. Can anybody else do it? Can it truly become democratized, right? Where somebody who is poor, who can't make the rent, is able to, in a safe way, build a lawyer on the spot for his case, right? And have access to it, right? That would be like the true power of democratization.
Did you see the new medical report that came out of Google when they just ran that study on assisted with AI, plain doctor with assisted, and then straight AI without assistance from the doctor? And it turned out the AI with precision was winning by like 20%. Like, that's insane. It gives you like it gives you a pause, because you're like, what is the value chain here, right? Like humans mean something. So I always go back to car washes or chess, right? So like chess, they already got beat by computers 20 some years ago. Like Gary Kasparov's got a TED talk about what it feels like to get passed by technology. Like, he's very eloquent in how he speaks. And he's like, yeah, we got beat, but chess players are still playing chess. Everybody still watches the human chess players. They still buy their books. Levi just put out one on YouTube, and it's like a bestseller. And they're making more money than ever in chess. So there's the same thing goes for car washes. Car wash industry has been completely automated. I mean, a guy used to go up and wash your windshield, like, and use all the chemicals like by hand, right? Then it moved into this automated system. And today you can just go in, press a button, and done. But if you look at one of the top car washes in the Midwest, it's human driven considerably. It's a place called Mike's Car Wash, actually. And then Crew Car Wash out of Indianapolis. They're crushing it. More business than like any other car wash, because they added that human customer service. They make you know that you're respected, loved, cared for, and serviced for, and they have unbelievable customer service. They charge more, and people are willing to pay it, because in my mind, people love people. So I'm going to keep going back to that.
Yeah. So it looks like your car wash analogy is a really good one, because they are using the machine for what it does well, and then using the human for what it does well, right?
Right on, brother. Yeah.
Does should do 90% of the work, and then the human should do the remaining 10 and bring empathy, like, relationships, like the stuff that AI is not yet very good at, like being authentic or being empathetic and having feelings.
Know what it feels like to be depressed and watching Netflix. Like know what it feels like to like be sad. to know what it feels like to have the wind blow against your skin. There's so many beautiful things about being human, right? And we can appreciate those just fine.
Correct.
Well, that's like
AI will get there someday. It's just not there yet.
Like for some reason, my video player doesn't have the right orientation, so that's why they're not going to render well. But one of the things I was going to bring up is this Chinese room argument. I don't know if you guys have even heard of this, but we're talking about like people, and I think people are intentional, and I think we are very unique in the universe, and we're a whole lot different than a large language model, especially right now, you know. And there's this sort of thought experiment by John Searle that talks about this Chinese room, and this Chinese room is essentially defining what a large language model is today. It's a black box of intelligence that we put inputs in, and then there's outputs that come out of it. But this system doesn't really understand anything we're doing at this point. It doesn't really have emotions. It's more of a mechanical, syntactical probability machine right now when it comes to generating text, you know. And I think we're moving into multimodal, which is, you know, creating imagery. And John was mentioning sort of like where the AI came out, and Scale AI was like training like visualization and driving and like just really like autonomous vehicles. So we're starting to see this push from like almost, people use the term artificial intelligence all the time. They call it like artificial general intelligence, which seems confusing. To me, I sort of consider it like, what do we have as artificial intelligence, and when does it move to this intentional agent that has its own sort of volition, you know, to do things? I think that's the big confusing factor. And right now, when we talk about like ethics, I feel like we can treat ethically a large language model like we can a car wash. That's not. It's just a mechanical machinery, essentially.
I saw a guy named Bernardo Kastrup. Have you heard of him?
No, please tell us.
He puts up, like, he says, like, if you throw 2 trillion rocks across the ground and you put them in a weird pattern and you run electricity through them, right? Does that make it human? Does that give it life? Does that give it consciousness? That's sort of what's happening, right? It's a bunch of material that you're just running electrical current through. Is that what humanity is? Then you get into the concept of like emergent behaviors out of complexity, right? So are we just complexity, and it's so complex upon complexity, upon complexity, and an emergent of consciousness exists? That's like a super incredible question to ask, and it's an impossible thing to answer. I think Penrose did the best job, in my opinion, with his analysis of it. It's kind of the ORC-OT theory, which is all about these microtubules in your neuron that collapse basically the quantum effect. So it allows it to collapse, and that's what consciousness is, and creates experience. But he's got this beautiful way to describing it. But I don't know anybody else that's come up with an actual mechanism that makes any sense at all. So your question's super freaking deep, like, because the inference patterns that exist on the tokenization, it acts a lot like the mind does. And when you start having these integrated models that are put in place, like the text 3 and text 2 that were just released, you start almost getting like axioms, like a deeper level of understanding, and it passes in until you get to this like core truth type thing, right? So it seems as if it's mimicking what the brain does very freaking well. And that's what that Ilya guy from OpenAI, it seems like that's his goal, like super intelligence, let's go.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty deep, and I don't think if everybody is like that's following is like deep into quantum physics, so they may not know Roger Penrose or like deep mathematics, but there is this concept that we are playing into this world where AI may have this idea of having intentionality or being able to generate work on its own volition. You know, so like being able to describe that and really understand that, I think, is one of the biggest issues when it gets into even business, because they think when they adopt AI, and maybe we can like sort of go back to the beginning, when they adopt AI, they want it to solve everything. But these AIs aren't like a living volitional thing. It's not like you turn on your AI co-pilot and it's now they're solving all of your issues, and you have no impact on this. I view it much
human
more,
in the loop, right?
Yes, and I think it's more right now is like, if you're going to dig a pool into your property, are you going to use a shovel or are you going to use an excavator? And with AI, I feel it's much more of a tool set right now, and not moving into this level of like intentional agency at a level that I think we're sort of perceiving, or that it's here. I think we're moving that direction, but I do think that when we talk about AI and generative AI, it's really, what is this new thing that happened a year ago that allows us to capitalize on our thoughts and be more articulate. So I think that's the new big emergence, and I think that's what, if we can best sort of share, like how do we adopt AI today and just have it in your daily life, and not think about like, oh, like if I turn this on and this on, all of a sudden there's this Frankenstein AI in my house. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about like use cases earlier, and I kind of came to my mind is the topic of like specialized models, right? So you're probably seeing it like crazy, of specialized use cases and them interacting with each other. So you're going to end up with this LLM to LLM type of communication network. So Alden, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So what you're talking about is, there are many names for it. Super agent is one of them. Agent workflows is another, and we are seeing interest coming up in that. The basic idea is, you can create one agent that does something really, really specific, right? For example, in Chris's case, it could be this agent, all that it does is laws regarding sheds in Ohio, right?
Right.
And then you can have an orchestrator that basically says, let me ask Chris's agent for what I should do, then have it be checked by a verification agent, then send it to a judge agent, right? And so you create these orchestrators that talk to each other to create what's called a super agent, right? So the big question here is, can a single LLM like GPT-4 become like super intelligent? Or are you better off creating little RAG agents, right? And have them work together to create intelligence, right? This is the same old thing from 30 years ago. Should you have one big IBM mainframe, or do you have these little Intel microcomputers
But
that
isn't
can?
isn't OpenAI? I mean, the new ChatGPT 4 is running multiple LLMs internally. Like it is an SMOE. I thought it had 8 LLMs inside of it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what's going under the hood there, but
Okay.
from an agent perspective, like, I can see situations like, say, there's a grant committee. You can have 8 different agents. One guy writes a grant, another guy reviews the grant, another guy is the judge, another guy orchestrates the thing, right? And you can create a lot of like good stuff that by combining the agents. So this is the autogen framework that is emerging, and super agent and multi-agent systems.
Whenever you see Ilya though from OpenAI and you like watch him on an interview, he's like a big meditator, like super calm, right? And then you listen to him talk about RAG and his system, you can see his mouth kind of twitch because he doesn't want it to be like it ruins his picture. Now they have to add something to what I built to make it work, right? I think he just wants it to work the way he built it, right? He wants it all to be one product. He's got that kind of mentality. But you're right. It takes all these tools and creatures we create and mix and matching, and it becomes like an art. So the guys I feel like who are great at deploying it, it's kind of like finding the Shelbys, right? Remember Shelby versus Ferrari, the movie that came out, and you had he's like an artist and an engineer. He's got left and right side, right? So that guy looks at it kind of like an engineering diagram and an art, right, piece. and those guys accelerate in that environment because it's a blank canvas. So they just start putting it together. And to me, they're kind of like artists nowadays, but they're engineering it. And I find these guys super awesome to talk to, and I just want to listen like all day long. You're probably one of them, Alden. I know Chris is like that.
I think we are like moving into a realm where, tech was sort of the same thing for a long time. And there was a lot of exceptional developers. And like over the last year, I've ran into so many that sort of realized like how big this really was. And like, however their lens or perspective was, like they're all in, right? And I think that's definitely where all three of us are. There's several, like, there's 255,000 people that are interested in leaning into AI that just in our group, which is amazing. And I think we're finding these power users. And like when you find these power users, and Alden's like in the Boston sort of ecosystem, we've been in rooms where they're telling us that you're not only just like 5 times better than yourself, you might be 10 times better, but you might be 50 times, that you might be 100 to 1,000 times better. And if you're in these power networks, the power users of AI, and you have access and you have capability, like, I would love to have a perfect like system that you just tell it does whatever, like that version of Ilya's versioning. But RAG AI works, and it works really well, and it's something that you can deploy and own. And I think that's like, having that perfect deployment versus, being able to like make it work. I think we're finding a lot of people make it work. And I think this year we're going to start seeing AI workflows. I cannot wait till Siri or Alexa actually works like it should, and you can hack around and like make it like work right now with an AI. And why wouldn't you have that? Why wouldn't you have Jarvis, in your house, and I can't wait for stuff like that to sort of hit. And I know a lot of people are putting these workflows. I mean, like if you could just talk to something and make something work over here, that's going to be a big deal. And if you have co-pilots, that, hey, visualize this data or analyze this for me, or give me the manual for this, those are going to be major things. But I think each one of those almost need to be programmed once or set up, or that workflow needs to be configured one time. So this year will be the time frame where businesses should figure out which workflows they should automate and, decrease their time needed on these mundane tasks, and then figure out how you can do 100 of those, and then find somebody, these AI power users, that can help you build that ecosystem of small AIs, like Alden was saying. I think it's a big micro process. And if you're using ChatGPT's API on top of it, it's still that bigger vision, but it's so microserviced that it works almost customized to everybody's use case, which is totally unique. And no code, low code, and voice. I can't wait till I can code with voice.
2 topics. So one is if you personalize everything to such a degree that everything's unique to each individual, then you lose some common ground. Like when we were young, we watched Seinfeld, but the whole freaking country watched it. And then we'd go in the next day to work and they'd all have something common to think about. And I know there's in philosophy, like for common things that ground us together is important. So I don't mind having like not a complete unique interaction every time that's a highly personalized. I don't know how much that'll divide us or if that'll create unity or not. But that's an interesting like kind of outcome that could take place, right?
Well, I guess it does depend on like, your preference on when do you want to give AI? Do you give it to your family? Do you give it to your kids? Like my daughter's in piano and she's used it to compose a piano sort of remix is what I would call it today, but on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And it was very good. And she did that very early on, so does that increase skill sets, and like, how can you build that experience that makes good humans? That's important to me. I want my kids to be good humans, but I also think AI is going to be important. So how do we build those sort of things that, people can use AI, and knowing, like, there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to move into an AI world. It'd be like, if you're not going into AI, it'd be like, I'm not using electricity. And those people still sort of exist, which is amazing, but it's a whole different dynamic and choice, you know, and I don't think there's going to be like anybody that's going to be able to be essentially off the grid or off the tech, even if they want to. Maybe there's ways that we can divide social media and AI and our relationship with technology, but I definitely think it's here to stay.
There's an issue of security and privacy though, because it's going to be proliferated, right? So how do you secure the thing? How do you make sure that we have a standard? I mean, the standard companies are way behind right now. Like they're all releasing standards, but they're all lagging. There's too many new tools coming out to account for it too fast. So I feel like there's ways that you can create frameworks that allow for a little bit of like flexibility within the standard. So people always want to go like, I want it to be like 100% right. But in this world, it's more about a gradient. There's sort of like it's like 95% right, or it's 97% right. And that's why that human in the loop matters. So, but from a security framework side, I feel like there's a lot of work to be done, and we need to be cautious on our deployments and make sure that's in place, then go full speed. So I feel like there is an order of operation there. Go ahead, Alden, sorry.
Yeah, totally. That's why, like, even in our deployment roadmaps, we tell people start with public data first and use it internally first. Like, let your employees get used to it, test it out, feel good, and then you say, okay, now let's put it in front of customers, right? So having those deployment sequences allows for like a safe way of deploying AI.
And then detecting if there's problems. So guardrails are a big deal, right? And you want to put those in place.
2 things are important. Guardrails are important, and I'm sure like OpenAI and whoever, that will be the first level of guardrails. But the second level is to actually look at the chat logs, right? And gather the intelligence from that. So
that's scary, right? Because you're recording the conversations, right? And if we're doing that globally, that rolls into a central environment. So you're in that situation where Morgan Freeman was staring at the TVs and he's like, I can't record every cell phone call in the city. That's not ethical, right? So like that's actually a challenge, but there's actually ways to mitigate that exact problem that we've looked at.
Well, I think what's interesting here, and like it's not like adversarial, but it's very interesting. I came from like the social media realm. Like I would have never got into like I didn't go into traditional tech. You know, like going to MIT earlier this year was really awesome that I got to meet Alden in person. But we also got to meet like this is Dr. Michael Stonebreaker. He invented like databases like Postgres, you know, and we have like Bob Frankston. He invented like Excel, right? Like super smart, brilliant people. There's a couple more that like we met, you know, like I went to the AI conference, met Benjamin Mann at Anthropic. You're meeting these companies, and there's
tell me who that last guy is real quick. Is that the CEO of Anthropic or one of their CTOs?
He's one of the co-founders, Ben Mann of Anthropic. Wow. He had a really great talk, and I was going to play it tonight. Like next week, I'll figure out our orientation so we can play these videos. But Ben Mann talks about launching like a safe, trustworthy, and helpful AI that does no harm. You know, and then there's a Dr. Bob Metcalf. I don't have a picture of him up here. He invented connectivity, like Ethernet. You know, like some people are going to really care about securing the internet, and others are going to try to do social media or just use the internet and like ease of use. And I think that there's a living in both realms. Like if it wasn't for social media, I think cybersecurity and keeping it locked down and less is more was the MO. But then mobile phones came out and social media and now AI. So there's this edge that's never been opened like this before. And you got to be an edge company, you know? So how do you have a customer service bot that just works and is designed to always handle the best mechanism and the best responses to best suit that customer's issue and pain point? And you're going to learn that through recording and like repurposing and retraining on data. So there's going to be stuff that, you know, is tough to secure. And on the same point too, I've seen almost all the big companies have been, you know, breached for sure. Like we're in a very weird world where you should think about your personal security yourself. and you're the only one that's ever going to keep you safe, because every big systems gets hacked, whether it's healthcare, big tech platform, Microsoft, everybody's been hacked. And you've
That's
got to
okay. That's okay, right? It's not if you get hacked, it's if you are aware of being hacked, and then you can respond and recover, right? So there's a whole process with NIST. Hacks are going to happen. There's nothing that's 100% right. So Alden, what you were saying earlier, I think you were kind of starting down this line of thought. So I might have interrupted. I want to bring it back to you.
No. So what I was saying is that the log information with the chats, right, is also a nice safety mechanism, wherein by analyzing the logs with AI, you can then see if there is bias happening, if there is, hallucination, if there is. That's the part that people have not like woken up to yet. And for us, it's like a big priority now, where chat logs are turning out to be the goldmine of information.
Are they not the most beautiful place? That's actually, it is where the value is at.
The sort of intelligence you can get from the chat logs, because people are more amenable to talking to an AI than they are to a human, right?
It's a grounding source, right?
Exactly.
And then there's you and I want to talk to you more now, my friend. Gosh, I'm going to keep listening.
When I ask people something, they'll be like, oh, you know what? I don't want to offend you, Alden. Like, we are very polite with other humans. But with AI, people are saying exactly what they feel, right? It's almost like, right? And you get like complete unbiased, like in the raw feedback. And since you can now analyze it with AI, you are able to gather fantastic insights. Like we now looking at our logs, we are able to say like, okay, here's where the product needs to improve. Here is the feedback. Here is content that is missing. Here is a blog post that we need to write because our bot doesn't know about them, right? So these are all things emerging from the chat logs.
And that's why OpenAI has such a lead, and it's going to be so hard to catch them because they have so much adoption and so much analysis and usage data. And that's why everybody's giving away their LLMs, because they're like, they need to catch up, and that's how you catch up. So it was very courageous of them to release that publicly, right? But they realized that that's where the gold mine was, and that's how far ahead they were. So we're all just catching up, man. They're so far ahead.
Correct.
Yeah. And they've raised a lot of capital too, and I think they'll continue to do that. And I don't think we'll ever see in the next decade such a CEO debacle that happened last year, by displacing Sam Altman.
That's scary. That's a scary scenario.
Yeah, like it's a very ubiquitous system at this point, and it's operating at a level that it's in our daily lives, it's in our businesses. So having backup plans, having the best foot forward, having the best understanding how we can deploy AI today, things that make sense for us today. I encourage everybody to use AI. I encourage you, if you're going to do your first step, custom GPT is a great first step. If you are looking for a complete enterprise level secured AI strategy, John's a great person to reach out to. I think he's very careful on how this stuff's implemented, and you should be. If your IP and your data is very important to you, you should take it very serious. And you should also take it very serious that if you're not implementing AI, your competition may pull away so quickly and rapidly with that sort of capability that it'll be hard to compete in certain areas. So I think there's this sense of urgency, but also this sense of making the right decision. So contact John if that's something you're interested in. I think we did go live this week, guys. We're right on our hour, so we're not going to go over our hour.
Good job with getting the tech done, Chris. This was smooth.
Yeah, well, it's going to get smoother. I'm so mad. I had videos lined up. I have all these great plans for the last 2 weeks. I can't deploy them. They're looking good on my end, but when I go live, it doesn't show. But thank you both for showing up. Hopefully we can do this more. Like I said, I have quite a few people that I think have some really cool perspectives. and I would love to build some type of like little ecosystem that we're just sharing best of our sort of practices in the AI
Correct.
industry, and maybe they spark some insight, into those trying to make the next step.
Yeah, the learning part is something that we should definitely, focus on, and having people like good teachers and coaches.
So what we did at my company is I have interns that come in from this really cool school in Northern Kentucky called the Ignite Institute. And I took those high school kids and I put them on our AI team, but I didn't have them go get paper clips. I put them on the team, and they picked it up so fast, and they're contributing. And then we created a pipeline to the universities. So they're going to go straight into college, like looking at this with experience right off the bat. And then we're creating another pipeline from that same school to send more in. So we see that as like a beautiful next generation. And it's amazing how open their minds are. They do amazing things. They're really into it.
That would be great. Let's really build on some learnings, and finding where the audience is at, like, starting from the best adoption level. Let's really talk about that over the next couple of weeks on some curriculum. I think we should definitely cover some things that we just sort of take for granted right now, but would probably change people's lives if they knew how to do something a little bit more efficiently, or knew the right tool, or the right connections or network. The other thing we're going to start sharing a little bit more is access to like Founders Hub by Microsoft. There's a few others that I think we're a really nice connector for startups to find the solutions they need to at least get off the ground without putting the capital in. And we have some really exciting things, I think, coming up with the entrepreneurship space that if we can put that together, I think that's coming in March. It'll give a lot of cool AI tools to entrepreneurs. So thank you both for showing up. Thanks everybody that tuned in. We will continue to do this next week. We're going to work to get better and better. Thank you, John. Thank you, Alden, for showing up, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, all.